Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3Jarrett, here bringing you another awesome ranking video to share with you guys today. Now, since so many of you out there actually really liked my last two ranking videos involving the God of War franchise and the Uncharted series, I decided to do another ranking video, this time going over the Devil May Cry series. Now, hopefully I was expecting that Capcom would announce a proper Devil May Cry game at this year's E3, but hopefully there's some hope that they might announce it at this next coming TGS. So, if they happen to do, I decided to rank all 5 of the current Devil May Cry games from worst to best. So, starting off real simple, shouldn't surprise many of you as I start off with number 5 and the worst Devil May Cry game in the series.
Okay folks, I'm not gonna bullshit this. This game undoubtedly falls into the category of being in my top 5 most hated video games I've ever played. The only reason I won't give this an even lower score is because, apart from a lot of other games that are on that very same list, this one is actually playable. Now, I may not have liked the overall structure and gameplay mechanics that they chose to add, but I legitimately hate everything else about this game. The main story was just poorly executed. I hated the visual styles that the game's developers decided to choose for whatever reason. I really disapprove of the character models, and just like many others like me, they screwed up Dante's look so bad they made him look like a crack addict, and it was so poorly and negatively received that the definitive edition tried to repair the damage by making him look as best he could to the original style of Dante that we had all come accustomed to. The music was simply horrible to the point where every time an action scene took place, I had to put on my own set of headphones and listen to my own music in order to make this game playable. Now, the developers also really got the characters of Dante and Virgil wrong, to the point where they are completely unrecognizable to me. These are not the adventures of Dante and Virgil, these are the adventures of Bob and his bullshit brother Steve. To this day, I have no idea what the hell Capcom was thinking by allowing some unknown studio access to one of their most popular franchises. Devil May Cry 4 only came out 5 years before this did, and as far as I'm concerned, and many others, it was a damn good game, with only one major issue that they clearly could have fixed in the next installment. And what makes this even worse is that many of the comments that I've read during the development of this game is that people who are close to this franchise actually went on record and actually damned the original 4 games, stating that this new game was going to be superior to those older versions, and that pisses me off to this day. Bottom line, this game had no reason to exist. The fans didn't ask for this, and all we can do is hope that Capcom gets their shit together and gives us the Devil May Cry 5 game we all want. But until then, I don't want anything to do with this poor excuse of a game. And if by some crazy chance you are a fan of this game, please be respectful and don't tell me in the comments down below, or I will delete your comment. On to number 4. Number 4 on my list is Devil May Cry 2, which is undoubtedly the weakest installment from the original series of Devil May Cry games. Now, one of my few issues that I have with this game is that, compared to the first installment, it's really not that much of an improvement. True, the main core gameplay for the most part is just as identical as it was in the first game, and though some of the visuals and even the span of the actual maps themselves have certainly been improved upon, the overall game design just feels somewhat cheap. Another problem that I have is that this game is simply way too easy. Even on the hardest difficulties, the swarm of enemies and even the boss fights just feel too easy to move through with very little to no effort. Now, Devil May Cry 2 does get some positive points in my book for dividing the main plot into 2 sections, which allows you to play as both Dante and the mysterious new character Lucia. But it really faults itself by making a similar mistake that even Devil May Cry 4 did, in which it really does not progress the main character Dante in any way. This Dante chronologically is the oldest version of the character that we see, and he just seems completely uninterested throughout the entire game. He doesn't have a character arc where he starts in one place and ends up somewhere else as a character, and I really got the impression that this was just a filler job for him without any real stakes. However, the game does a fantastic job of handling Lucia and her story. Having her learn about her origins and then wanting to grow as a character on her own was really a great story to tell. And even playing as her was a much harder challenge than it was, as it even gives her a series of exclusive bosses and levels just for her, which gives it the best sense of variety between 2 characters, which is something that not even Devil May Cry 3 and 4 were able to pull off. If you never got a chance to play this game, I would still suggest you give it a try just to see how Lucia's story plays out. And I'm telling you, if they're going to do a Devil May Cry 5 game, it needs to take place after this one, as it really has the most potential of really driving the story and having the most diversity of any Devil May Cry game that I've played to date. But only time can tell if that game will ever come. Number 3 on my list is the very first installment, simply titled Devil May Cry. And when it comes to the very first installment, there's really not much to say. It's simply the one that started the franchise and established the requirements you would need to make not just a great Devil May Cry game, but to make a great action hack and slash title. The main campaign was very well paced as our main protagonist takes on his next great mission as he attempts to take down the demon Prince Mundus. And though the story is very light on characters, it does reveal enough to the player to significantly affect the characters and reveal that there are certainly certain moments that are very character driven, showing that there is a history between these characters, and certainly between two characters in particular. Now, the gameplay, depending on your difficulty setting, is both fun and challenging at the same time, requiring you to hone your skills with the controls and being able to stay self-aware of everything and every enemy in your environment, otherwise you'll be taken down quite easily. In short, if you cannot even at least meet the standards that this game set up all the way back in 2001, you don't deserve to call yourself a Devil May Cry game. On to number 2. Number 2 on my list is Devil May Cry 4, and despite my original feelings toward this game when it originally came out, over time I've come to recognize it as, despite some of its flaws in its use of cheap gaming development tactics, that Devil May Cry 4 is a truly great installment in the franchise. It certainly is the best looking entry to date and has the highest cinematic value out of any entry in the entire franchise. The gameplay is extremely well balanced and challenging, and with the release of the most recent remastered edition, giving us even more additional new playable characters like Virgil, Trish, and Lady, it unquestionably has the highest replayability value, as each character feels very different, requiring the player to learn how to properly use each character properly for maximum effect. My biggest issue with Devil May Cry 4 is that despite everything it gets right in terms of an individual game, and it simply has the most amount of wasted potential. It makes the exact same mistake that Devil May Cry 2 did in wasting the main protagonist character Dante, as the main story really revolves around newcomer Nero, and Dante is simply reduced as to be a spectator, having him simply play throughout the entire series of levels in reverse. And when it comes to new playable characters, instead of Capcom putting any real effort into trying to create individual levels for each character, Capcom took the cheap route and simply has you play through all the standard missions with these new playable characters and makes no attempt to progress their stories as characters. Especially when it comes to Virgil, in which there is so much they could have done with his character to add to the lore of the story. However, this is still a must-play title for anyone who is a fan of the Devil May Cry franchise, and because of its flaws, it falls significantly short of the best entry in the franchise, which at this point some of you can obviously tell it has to be Devil May Cry 3 without question. Though the actual gameplay mechanics for playing as Dante are certainly improved upon in Devil May Cry 4, Devil May Cry 3 provides the highest amount of improvements from its previous installment. The main story of Devil May Cry 3 is by far my favorite, as it is mainly focused once again back on Dante during his early years as a demon hunter, and it even does a really great job of introducing new characters like Lady, and is even more interesting and badass older brother Virgil, and a story that pits the two brothers against each other in an attempt at dealing with their father Sparta's locked away powers, which for me makes this entry the most personal entry in the entire franchise. The introduction of the combat style system was a great addition, which gave the player much more variety with how one can actually play through each mission, as each individual style has their own unique movesets to give the game a great amount of replay value. The visual style chosen for the game gave it a great sense of atmosphere, and the enemy variety with both its standard enemies and its boss fights is the most challenging to contend with to date, at least for me. The only issue that I've only ever had with Devil May Cry 3 is that when it came to the special edition and giving us the opportunity to play as Virgil, Capcom once again took the cheap route and simply reused all of Dante's missions and boss fights rather than trying to create any real exclusive content just for Virgil, which, in my opinion, he's always seemed to be just as interesting as a character as Dante and well deserving of his own game. But this is a common issue with the Devil May Cry franchise in a whole, and it doesn't stop Devil May Cry 3 from being my favorite entry in the entire franchise.
And that is my list of the worst to best Devil May Cry games in the entire franchise. I'd like to know what are your guys' thoughts on my list of the Devil May Cry games, and please share your own list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And if you like this video, feel free to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to track me on future videos. And if there's any other franchises you actually like me to rank, please tell me in the comments down as well. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.